He didn't even look at the patient. "Clear the room. My fiancée comes first." Dr. Emily Carter stood frozen for half a second, then refused. "This boy is dying." That was all it took. Derek Hammond snapped. His hand locked around her wrist and yanked her away from the table as monitors screamed behind them. "You don't understand power," he hissed. Then, the doors opened. A man stepped into the ER, navy tactical jacket still wet from the rain, eyes calm in a way that didn't belong in chaos. At his side, a German shepherd didn't bark. It watched, calculating. "Let her go," the man said quietly. Derek turned slowly. "And who the hell are you?" The man didn't answer fast. He just took one step closer, and the entire room felt it. Something had just stopped being in Derek's control. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from. Subscribe and stay until the end. What happens next will expose everything they tried to hide. The night outside Mercy General Hospital pressed against the glass like a living shadow. Rain sliding down the windows under a flickering emergency light that never seemed to rest. Inside Mercy General's emergency department, everything moved at the edge of controlled chaos. The smell of antiseptic, blood, and burnt coffee blended into a constant reminder that life here was measured in seconds, not minutes. Dr. Emily Carter stood at the center of it all. Emily was 28, a senior emergency physician despite her age, known for her sharp clinical judgment and unnerving calm under pressure. Her body carried soft, full curves that made some underestimate her until they saw her operate. Fast hands, precise orders, a mind that refused to fracture, even when patients did. Her dark brown hair was tied into a practical bun, slightly loosened from the long shift, and her green eyes carried the fatigue of too many nights like this, yet still refused to look away from suffering. People often mistook her softness for hesitation. They rarely made that mistake, twice. A stretcher slammed through the doors. 14-year-old male. Severe abdominal trauma. Hypotensive, shouted paramedic Luis Mendoza, a short, broad-shouldered man with sun-browned skin and a voice that had learned to stay loud over sirens. Blood soaked through the boy's shirt, spreading fast across the gurney sheets. The monitor screamed unstable vitals. Emily moved instantly. Room 3. Blood type O negative. 2 units now. Prep OR support. We're not waiting. Her voice cut through the room with surgical authority. Nurses obeyed without question. In trauma bays like this, hesitation killed faster than disease. The boy's face was pale, lips turning gray, his hands twitching weakly as if trying to hold onto consciousness itself. Emily's mind ran through probabilities: internal bleeding, likely splenic rupture, possible liver involvement. Every second mattered. Then the doors opened again, but not like an emergency, like an entrance. Derek Hammond walked in as if the hospital belonged to him. He was in his early 30s, tall with a groomed athletic build, expensive suit slightly undone at the collar, as though urgency was something he only occasionally experienced. His blonde hair was perfectly styled, his jawline sharp, and his eyes carried the kind of entitlement that came from never being told no. 2 private security guards followed him, both wearing black tactical suits, earpieces, and expressions that suggested they were used to clearing rooms rather than asking permission. Derek didn't look at the dying boy first. He looked at Emily. "Stop everything," he said flatly. "We need OR priority for my fiancée. She has a fractured clavicle and mild concussion. This is unacceptable delay." Emily didn't move her hands from the patient. "Your fiancé is stable. This child is not. He goes to surgery first." The silence that followed was immediate and heavy. Even the monitor seemed louder. Derek's expression shifted. Confusion first, then irritation, Then something sharper. He stepped closer, invading the sterile space of the trauma bay. Do you know who I am? My father sits on this hospital board. You will prioritize her care. Emily finally looked up. Her eyes met his without flinching. And I am the physician, responsible for who survives this room. For a fraction of a second, something almost like doubt crossed his face. Then it disappeared. He moved fast. His hand shot out and grabbed her wrist, hard enough to stop circulation. The grip was not accidental. It was control. He pulled her away from the patient's bedside, dragging her half a step before she caught herself. Let go, she said, low and controlled, but there was strain under it now. You don't understand consequences, Derek hissed. Nurses froze. One of them, a young man with trembling hands, looked toward security, but did not move. In Mercy General, certain names made people remember their careers. Emily tried to pull back. You are obstructing emergency care. Derek tightened his grip. The monitors behind her spiked as the boy's condition worsened. Then the doors opened again. But this time, the room changed before anyone even looked. A man stepped inside wearing a dark navy jacket over tactical gear, reins still clinging to his shoulders. He moved with quiet precision, the kind of stillness that didn't belong to hospitals or civilians. His face was angular, weathered in a way that suggested years spent under harsh conditions rather than fluorescent lights. Short dark hair, faint stubble along a strong jaw, and eyes that didn't scan a room. They assessed it. Marcus Hale. He was introduced once, briefly, by hospital security as consulting security liaison, though that description felt too small for him. Former Navy SEAL, former military intelligence operator, and more recently, someone who had been called in when systems failed quietly and needed correcting without headlines. At his side walked a German shepherd, Rex. Rex was large, solid muscle beneath a dense black and tan coat, his amber eyes locked forward with unnerving focus. His ears were partially scarred, a subtle reminder that he had not lived a gentle life. Unlike ordinary hospital therapy dogs, Rex did not relax in crowds. He evaluated them. His leash was loose, not because he was untrained, but because he chose control over restraint. Rex stopped the moment he saw Derek's hand on Emily. His posture changed instantly, shoulders lowering, weight shifting forward, a silent warning forming in muscle rather than sound. Marcus saw it too. His gaze followed the line from Derek's grip to Emily's wrist, then to the monitor screaming behind her, then to the dying child on the table. Something in his expression hardened. Release her hand, Marcus said. His voice was not loud. It didn't need to be. It carried the weight of command experience, used to environments where hesitation meant casualties. Derek turned slowly, still holding Emily. Who the hell are you supposed to be? Marcus stepped closer, calm but absolute. Someone telling you you're about to make a very bad decision. Rex took one step forward, no growl yet, just presence. But every person in the room felt it, the shift in pressure, like oxygen thinning. Emily's breathing was tight now, not from pain, but from the collision of authority pressing on her from both sides. She could still hear the monitor behind her, the boy slipping further, seconds becoming irreversible. Marcus didn't break eye contact with Derek. You are interfering with emergency medical care. Let go, now. Derek tightened his grip as if proving something. And in that moment, Rex's low growl finally emerged. Not loud, not chaotic, but deep enough to silence everything else. Even Derek hesitated. For the first time since he entered the hospital, he looked uncertain, and that hesitation lasted just long enough for Marcus to take one step closer, his voice dropping into something colder. Last warning. The room held its breath, waiting for which system would break first, the hospital, the man, or the truth behind what was really being protected here. And then, Derek did not let go. The emergency bay doors finally closed behind the moment of confrontation. But the tension did not leave with Derek Hammond. It lingered in the air like residual static, clinging to every surface of Mercy General's ER. For a brief second after Derek refused to release Emily's wrist, everything had felt like it might collapse into violence. But hospital security arrived at the worst possible time for truth and the best possible time for containment. 2 guards rushed in, recognizing Derek immediately rather than assessing the situation objectively. And Marcus Hale's presence alone forced a recalibration of the room's power dynamics. Rex's posture, rigid and alert, was enough to make even trained personnel hesitate. Marcus did not escalate. Instead, he positioned himself between Emily and Derek with controlled precision, and in a voice that carried both authority and restraint, he forced compliance without a single unnecessary movement. Derek eventually released her, not because he yielded, but because he recalculated. As he stepped back, his gaze lingered on Emily with something colder than anger. Ownership interrupted. Then he left, escorted by his guards, but not before a quiet promise was made, in the form of a glance toward hospital leadership, already watching from the corridor. Emily stood frozen for a moment after it ended, her wrist aching where fingers had pressed too tightly into her skin. The boy on the table still needed her, still bleeding out in a world that had not paused for interpersonal conflict. She forced her breathing to stabilize, recentered herself with practiced discipline, and returned to the trauma bay as though nothing had happened, though internally everything had shifted. Marcus Hale did not follow immediately. He observed instead, watching how she re-entered the clinical environment without hesitation, despite what had just occurred. It told him more about her than any file could. The 14-year-old patient survived the immediate surgery window, though barely. Emily's hands moved with surgical precision as she coordinated transfusion and stabilization protocols. Only when the boy was moved into post-op critical care did the room begin to loosen its grip on crisis. Nurses dispersed, monitors quieted, and the sterile silence returned. But Emily's mind did not. Something about Derek's intervention did not align with standard hospital privilege behavior. It was not just entitlement. It was timing, precision, and confidence that suggested systemic protection rather than individual arrogance. Marcus finally approached her outside the trauma bay, near the scrub station. Rex followed quietly, sitting when Marcus stopped, his amber eyes scanning every passing staff member with unnerving attentiveness. Up close, Marcus Hale carried the unmistakable weight of someone shaped by environments where decisions had irreversible consequences. He was in his late 30s, lean but powerfully built, with short dark hair that had begun to show early traces of silver at the temples. His face was angular, marked by old scars along his jawline that hinted at past violence rather than advertised it. His expression was controlled, not distant, but selectively engaged, as though he had learned that attention itself was a resource. "You're Dr. Carter," he said. Emily nodded, still processing adrenaline in controlled waves. "And you are not hospital staff." A faint acknowledgement passed through Marcus's eyes. "Former. Now I'm here because someone requested oversight on operational irregularities." "That sounds vague," she replied. "It is," he said simply, "because what I was told and what I'm seeing don't match." There was no dramatic pause, no theatrical implication, just observation laid bare. Rex shifted slightly at Marcus's side, then relaxed again, but his gaze never left the corridor Derek had exited through. Emily studied Marcus more carefully now. "You came in at exactly the right moment." "I didn't plan it," he answered. "I was already inside the hospital reviewing security infrastructure when the alert came through the trauma channel." That detail unsettled her more than the confrontation itself. "Security infrastructure for what reason?" Marcus hesitated briefly, then chose precision over comfort. "There have been flagged inconsistencies in emergency room throughput, mortality coding, and insurance billing patterns tied to Mercy General over the last 6 months. I was brought in under a consulting capacity to verify whether those inconsistencies were administrative error or controlled manipulation." Emily's expression tightened slightly. She had seen inefficiencies before, bureaucratic mistakes, overwhelmed systems, but not coordinated patterns. "Not at this scale. I need access to patient records from tonight, she said immediately. Marcus studied her for a moment, as if measuring whether urgency was turning into recklessness. Then he nodded. You should see them. But I need to warn you. What you find may not stay contained. They moved together through the corridor toward the records wing. The hospital's fluorescent lighting hummed overhead, casting long, sterile reflections on polished floors. Staff moved around them without engagement, but Emily noticed something subtle now. Conversations paused as they passed, and eyes followed Marcus a fraction longer than necessary. Not curiosity, recognition. In the records office, they met Dr. Leonard Foster, a thin man in his 50s with neatly combed gray hair and wire-rimmed glasses that sat too precisely on his narrow nose. His white lab coat was spotless in a way that suggested more time spent avoiding mess than treating it. His voice was polite but guarded, each sentence carefully constructed to avoid implication. Dr. Carter, I assume this is about tonight's incident, Foster said, glancing briefly at Marcus. It's about the patient outcomes, Emily replied, and I need full access logs for the last 4 emergency admissions involving pediatric trauma. Foster hesitated just long enough to be noticeable. That level of access requires administrative clearance. Marcus stepped slightly forward, not aggressive, but present in a way that filled space. We're not requesting permission. We're verifying medical integrity. Something in Foster's posture changed subtly. Not resistance. Fear of being seen resisting. He turned to his terminal and began typing. Rex, sitting quietly near the door, suddenly lifted his head. His ears angled toward a storage corridor behind the office. His body stiffened. Not an aggression, but recognition. Marcus noticed immediately. Someone's in the back storage unit, Marcus said calmly. Foster froze. Emily looked at him. There shouldn't be anyone there. No one authorized, Marcus corrected. Rex stood now, silent and focused. The shift in his behavior was precise enough that even Emily felt it. Something was wrong before she could define it. Marcus motioned once toward the corridor. Stay here. But Emily did not move back. Those are my records too. Marcus met her eyes, then nodded once, accepting the decision rather than approving it. They moved toward the storage corridor together. The air changed slightly as they approached. Colder, less ventilated, carrying the faint metallic scent of stored equipment and paper. Inside, they found a man kneeling beside a locked cabinet, attempting to bypass its electronic latch with a portable device. He was mid-40s, muscular, wearing hospital maintenance uniform, but his hands moved with trained efficiency that did not belong to standard staff. His head snapped up immediately when he noticed them. Stop right there, Marcus said. The man froze for half a second, then reached for something inside his tool belt. Rex reacted instantly, not with noise, but with a forward surge of controlled force, stopping just short of contact, but eliminating distance in a way that made retreat psychologically impossible. Emily felt her pulse spike. Marcus didn't draw anything. He didn't need to. Step away from the cabinet. The man hesitated, then slowly raised his hands. But the damage was already done. The cabinet was partially open, and inside, folders were visible. Medical records, stamped and reclassified. Some marked with codes Emily had never seen used in standard triage documentation. She stepped forward despite Marcus's subtle warning glance. On the top file, she saw a name. A patient who had died 2 nights earlier. Cause of death listed as complication stable. Emily had been on shift that night. She remembered the code blue. She remembered the fight to resuscitate. And she remembered success. The record said otherwise. Her throat tightened slightly. Not with fear, but with something sharper. Recognition of contradiction. This is falsified, she said quietly. Marcus looked at the same file. His expression did not change, but something in his eyes hardened further. The maintenance worker spoke quickly now. You don't understand how deep this goes. You should leave it alone. Rex growled once, low, controlled, almost surgical in its warning, and somewhere deep in the hospital, an alarm that no one had triggered began to quietly blink on a security panel. The hospital's night shift had a way of pretending nothing had changed, even when everything already had. Mercy General continued to breathe through its corridors, its fluorescent lights humming with mechanical indifference, its staff moving between rooms with practiced urgency that masked growing unease. But for Emily Carter, nothing felt normal anymore. The file she had seen in the storage wing was still imprinted in her mind, like a scar that refused to fade. A contradiction between what she had done with her own hands and what the system claimed had happened. Marcus Hale stood beside her in the small staff lounge off the records wing, reviewing access logs and a secured terminal he had quietly obtained through internal authorization channels that carried more weight than they should have. Rex lay at his feet, unusually still, but his eyes remained open, scanning every movement in the hallway through the glass door. Marcus himself looked more distant now. Not emotionally, but strategically, like someone watching a pattern begin to reveal itself across multiple layers. Emily broke the silence first. That patient in the file. I stabilized him. I remember the code ending. He had a pulse when he left my care. Marcus didn't respond immediately. He rotated the screen slightly so she could see. Then this record is false, or your memory is being contradicted by institutional alteration. There's no in-between, she said, more to herself than to him. Marcus finally looked at her directly. There is. If records are being overwritten after discharge, then outcomes can be rewritten without changing clinical reality. That means someone is controlling narrative data at the administrative level. The implications settled heavily between them. This was no longer negligence or isolated corruption. It was structured manipulation. Before Emily could respond, a hospital pager system echoed through the corridor. The sound was sharper than usual, clipped and urgent. Marcus glanced at it immediately. Code alert, he said. A nurse appeared in the doorway seconds later. She was young, barely mid-20s, with pale skin and tightly tied blonde hair that had already begun to come loose from stress. Her badge identified her as Clara Jennings, though her expression suggested she had seen too much in too little time. We have an unexpected cardiac arrest in Ward 6, she said quickly. Elderly male, post-operative recovery. Dr. Carter, they're requesting you. Emily's instincts reacted before her suspicion could form. Why me? I'm not assigned to Ward 6 tonight. Clara hesitated. It's irregular. They said you were closest available attending. Marcus stepped forward slightly. Who authorized the call? Clara swallowed. Dr. Foster. At the mention of his name, Emily felt a cold shift inside her chest. Marcus exchanged a glance with her, then spoke calmly. We go together. Ward 6 was quieter than the emergency department, but the silence here felt heavier, more controlled. Doors opened automatically as they approached, sensors tracking movement in sterile rhythm. Rex moved ahead slightly, not aggressive but alert in a way that suggested he was reading something in the environment that humans could not yet see. Inside room 6B, the patient lay motionless. He was elderly, thin, with gray hair carefully combed, despite the circumstances. His chart identified him as Harold Vance, 78 years old, post-operative recovery from abdominal surgery 2 days prior. Monitors showed erratic readings that did not immediately align with visible condition. Emily moved to his side instantly, checking pulse, airway, responsiveness. This doesn't match cardiac arrest protocol, she said sharply. Vitals are inconsistent. Marcus scanned the room instead of the patient. His attention moved across IV lines, medication drips, and the monitor calibration. Something triggered this artificially, he said. Rex suddenly stiffened. The dog's attention locked under the bed frame. Emily followed his gaze. What is it? Marcus crouched slightly. Rex? The German Shepherd moved forward, slow and deliberate, then stopped near the underside of the hospital bed. His posture shifted, focused, rigid. Not aggressive yet, but fully engaged. Marcus reached under the frame carefully and pulled out a small medical injector device. Not standard hospital equipment. Modified. Manual override trigger attached. Emily froze. That's not ours. Marcus examined it briefly. It's designed to induce cardiac disruption in compromised patients. A moment of silence followed that statement. Not emotional silence. Operational silence. The kind that precedes realization. Clara Jennings appeared at the door, visibly shaken. "What's happening? I was told to bring emergency defibrillator support, but—" She stopped when she saw the device in Marcus's hand. "I didn't authorize that," she said quickly. Marcus stood slowly. "Who gave you the order?" Clara shook her head. "I don't know. It came through internal paging. Dr. Foster confirmed it." Emily's expression tightened. Why would he target his own patient? Marcus did not answer immediately. Instead, he examined the monitor again. Because this patient's outcome may not be medical, it may be administrative. That sentence did not make sense in a normal hospital context, but nothing about this environment felt normal anymore. Rex suddenly moved again, circling the bed once, then stopping near the patient's chart holder. He nudged it gently with his nose. The folder slipped slightly, revealing a secondary tag underneath the primary file. Emily pulled it out. Her face changed immediately. The secondary tag listed a different identity code, one that did not match Harold Vance. It referenced a billing classification linked to insurance escalation tiers. "This is double-coded," she said quietly. Marcus stepped closer. "Meaning what?" "Meaning this patient is listed under two separate administrative identities," she replied. "One clinical, one financial." The implication landed harder this time. Marcus straightened slightly. "That's not error. That's structure." Before Emily could respond, the monitor flatlined. But the patient had not changed, physically. No deterioration. No visible collapse. Just sudden, system death. Emily immediately checked the monitor leads. "This is not real asystole," she said sharply. "The rhythm is intact." Marcus looked at the injector again. Then someone just forced a data-based death declaration. Clara stepped back slowly, her face pale now. "This doesn't happen here. This is a hospital." Marcus turned toward her. "Then explain why it just did." A new voice entered from the corridor. Cold, controlled. Dr. Leonard Foster. He stood at the doorway in his white coat, glasses reflecting hallway light, expression composed in a way that suggested he had already anticipated this scene. Behind him were two security personnel, larger than standard hospital guards, both wearing tactical communication earpieces. "I was informed there was an unauthorized intervention in Ward 6, Foster said calmly. Emily stepped forward. This patient was manipulated. The cardiac arrest was induced. Foster looked at the monitor, then at Marcus, then at Rex. "I see no evidence of external interference," he said. Marcus held up the injector device. "This was under the bed." Foster glanced at it briefly. "Hospital property is frequently misfiled during emergency response." Emily's voice sharpened. "You're calling a controlled cardiac trigger misfiled equipment?" Foster adjusted his glasses slightly. "I am calling it unverified interpretation." There was a subtle but important distinction in his wording. Not denial, redirection. Marcus stepped forward one pace. "We are taking this device for forensic review." Foster did not react immediately. Instead, he looked at Emily directly. "Dr. Carter, you are still on probationary review status following earlier procedural deviation." Emily felt the statement like pressure, not threat. "You're threatening my license over this?" she asked. "I am reminding you of your professional boundaries," Foster replied. Rex growled once, low and restrained. Foster's eyes shifted briefly toward the dog, then back to Marcus. "I would advise you to leave hospital operational matters to certified staff." Marcus met his gaze without blinking. "And I would advise you to stop rewriting clinical outcomes after they happen." For a moment, neither moved. Then Foster turned slightly toward security. "Remove unauthorized personnel from Ward 6. The situation did not escalate physically. It did not need to. Authority in this environment was procedural, not muscular." But as Marcus took one final look at the patient, something in his expression changed subtly. Not surprise. Confirmation. This wasn't the first one. he said quietly. And for the first time, Foster did not respond immediately. Mercy General did not react like a hospital under investigation. It reacted like a system defending itself. Within hours of the incident in Ward 6, the atmosphere shifted in ways that were subtle at first. Access permissions tightening, internal communications delayed, security presence increasing near sensitive departments, but quickly escalated into something far more coordinated. Emily Carter felt it immediately when her badge failed to open the records wing she had accessed freely the night before. Marcus Hale noticed it in the way surveillance cameras subtly reoriented toward their movement paths instead of general coverage. They were no longer observing the system. The system was now observing them. Emily stood in a narrow staff corridor beside Marcus, her expression controlled but strained. She had changed into a fresh scrub top, though exhaustion still clung to her features. Her green eyes carried a mix of disbelief and growing resolve. "They revoked my access," she said quietly. "I can't even view my own patient logs." Marcus didn't look surprised. "That's not administrative response. That's containment protocol." Rex sat near Marcus's side, unusually alert. His ears tracked every passing voice in the hallway. His body angled slightly toward movement patterns rather than individuals. He was no longer reacting to immediate threats. He was mapping them. A new figure approached from behind them. Security Chief Roland Graves. He was a broad-shouldered man in his late 40s with a shaved head, a thick salt and pepper beard, and a permanent crease between his eyebrows that suggested years of enforcing rules rather than questioning them. His uniform was standard hospital security, but the way he carried himself was not. Graves did not walk like someone protecting patients. He walked like someone protecting boundaries. "Dr. Carter," he said, voice low and controlled, "you are hereby placed on temporary administrative suspension, pending review of procedural conduct." Emily stared at him. "On what basis?" Graves handed her a printed notice without hesitation. "Unauthorized interference in critical care protocol and failure to comply with supervisory instruction." Marcus stepped slightly forward. "Those are vague accusations." Graves met his gaze briefly. "They are sufficient." Rex let out a low, restrained sound. Not aggression, but recognition of imbalance. Emily felt something shift inside her. Not fear, but clarity. "You're suspending me for trying to save a patient who is still alive because the system says otherwise?" Graves did not answer directly. "Your badge will be deactivated immediately." Before she could respond, Marcus spoke. "And what about the device used in Ward 6? Graves paused only briefly. "No verified evidence of unauthorized equipment has been submitted." Marcus studied him for a moment. "Then your definition of evidence is selective." Graves turned slightly. "This conversation is concluded." And just like that, he left, escorted by 2 additional security officers who had appeared silently behind him. Emily stood still for a moment, absorbing the implications. "They're isolating me," she said quietly. Marcus nodded once. "They're isolating the variables they can't control." That phrase carried weight she did not want to acknowledge. Over the next hour, the hospital began to fracture into controlled zones. Internal communication channels were restricted. Certain departments were placed under audit lockdown. Staff members who had interacted with Emily were quietly reassigned or removed from shift rotation. It was not chaos. It was precision. Marcus led Emily to a secured storage office he had previously accessed through external authorization protocols. Inside, he opened a portable drive interface and connected it to hospital network fragments he had extracted earlier. Rex positioned himself at the doorway, blocking entry visually rather than physically, his presence enough to discourage interruption. "We need patterns," Marcus said. Emily crossed her arms tightly. "Patterns of what?" "Deaths," he replied simply. "And financial correlation." On the screen, fragmented datasets began to align. patient records, billing codes, mortality timestamps. At first, it looked like standard hospital noise, variations in outcome, administrative adjustments, insurance discrepancies. But Marcus filtered deeper layers. Then the pattern emerged. Emily leaned forward slightly. Those dates. They matched nights I was on shift. Marcus nodded. And not just you. Multiple attending physicians. Same wards. Same outcome pattern. She felt a cold realization building. You're saying this isn't tied to one doctor or one department. I'm saying it's system-wide, Marcus corrected, and structured. Rex suddenly shifted his position, head tilting toward the corridor outside the office. Marcus noticed immediately. We're not alone, Marcus said quietly. Footsteps approached. Not rushed. Controlled. 2 men entered. Private security contractors. Unlike hospital staff, these men wore reinforced tactical uniforms without identifying hospital insignia. One was tall and heavily built, with a close-cropped beard and a broken nose that had never been properly reset. The other was leaner, younger, with cold blue eyes, and the posture of someone trained to observe before engaging. The taller one spoke first. You need to shut this down. Marcus didn't move. That depends on what this is. The younger man glanced at Emily. You're Dr. Carter. You're not supposed to be involved anymore. Emily stepped forward slightly. I'm involved because patients are being misrepresented as dead. The bearded man exhaled slowly. No one is misrepresenting anything. You're misunderstanding classification protocols. Marcus tilted his head slightly. That's an interesting way to describe falsified death coding. The air tightened instantly. The younger contractor's hand shifted subtly toward his belt. Rex responded immediately. No bark, no leap. Just a shift in weight that redefined the room's geometry. The man froze. Marcus spoke calmly. You're not here for conversation. The bearded man smiled faintly. We're here to prevent escalation. That already failed, Marcus replied. A tense silence followed. Then the younger contractor spoke again, softer this time. You don't understand what you're exposing. This hospital isn't just a hospital. Marcus looked at him directly. Then explain it. The man hesitated. That hesitation was the answer. Before anything else could happen, Marcus reached into the terminal interface and triggered a rapid data extraction protocol. Files began transferring in real time. Logs, records, financial traces. Emily watched the progress bar climb with increasing urgency. The bearded contractor moved first, but Rex moved faster. He intercepted not with aggression, but positioning, blocking access without contact, controlling space in a way that made advancement irrational. Marcus didn't look up. If you move again, you lose control of the situation permanently. The younger contractor stepped back slightly, assessing risk. Then both men withdrew, without further escalation. Not retreat. Reassessment. Once they left, Emily exhaled slowly. They knew exactly what we were doing. Marcus nodded. Which means we're already inside their decision loop. The transfer completed. Marcus turned the screen toward her. What they saw was not a single anomaly. It was a network. Hundreds of patients, multiple departments, financial routing tied to mortality events, and timestamps synchronized with insurance payout triggers. Emily's voice dropped. This is not medical failure. Marcus met her gaze. No. It's optimized outcome manipulation. Rex sat quietly again, but his posture remained alert. For the first time, Emily understood the scale of what she was standing inside, and it was larger than she had imagined. Far larger. Mercy General Hospital no longer felt like a place designed to heal. It felt like a structure under internal siege, where every corridor carried the weight of hidden calculations, and every monitored heartbeat might be interpreted differently, depending on who controlled the system dashboard. The data Marcus Hale had extracted did not simply suggest corruption. It mapped it with precision, like a financial ecosystem built on medical outcomes. And now that the pattern was visible, It could no longer be unseen. Marcus stood in a temporary secure workspace they had converted from an unused administrative office on the hospital's upper floor. The room was dim, lit only by the glow of multiple encrypted screens. Rex lay near the entrance, alert but controlled, his amber eyes tracking every shift in hallway light as staff moved outside, like shadows of themselves. Emily Carter stood beside Marcus, arms crossed tightly, her exhaustion replaced by something sharper now. Focus, shaped by anger that had found direction. Marcus adjusted the final data feed. "Everything we extracted converges here," he said quietly. On the screen, clusters of patient identifiers aligned with insurance payout cycles, hospital billing escalations, and coded mortality classifications. It was not random. It was synchronized. Every death had a financial echo attached to it, routed through layered corporate accounts that ultimately traced back to a controlled board structure tied to the Hammond family. Emily leaned closer. Her voice was barely steady. "They're not just hiding mistakes. They're timing deaths." Marcus nodded once. "Deaths are being used as financial triggers." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The implication carried a kind of gravity that did not belong in medicine. It belonged in systems designed for extraction. A new presence entered the room, without announcement. Sarah Chen. She was in her early 40s, an investigative journalist, known for exposing institutional fraud across healthcare and corporate sectors. Her appearance carried a deliberate simplicity, straight black hair tied into a low professional ponytail, olive-toned skin with a faint scar along her left cheek that suggested she had once been close to a story that turned dangerous, and sharp dark eyes that constantly evaluated angles before accepting information. She wore a dark gray blazer over a plain black shirt, practical rather than fashionable, as if she had learned long ago that visibility was both an advantage and a liability. Her voice was calm, but carried the controlled urgency of someone who had stopped being surprised by corruption years ago. "I got your encrypted call," Sarah said as she stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "You said you had something I would care about." Marcus turned slightly toward her. "We have more than something. We have structure." Sarah glanced at the screens, absorbing the data in silence for a few seconds. This level of synchronization between billing cycles and mortality coding doesn't happen by accident. "It's not accidental," Emily said. Her voice carried restrained anger now. "I've seen patients declared dead on paper while I was still stabilizing them." Sarah's expression didn't change, but something in her posture tightened. "Then this isn't a hospital failure." "It's a revenue system." Rex lifted his head briefly at the tone shift in the room, then settled again. Sarah stepped closer to the screen. "Who controls the back end?" Marcus highlighted a filtered ownership chain. "Hammond Medical Holdings, board-level consolidation with external insurance routing partnerships." Sarah exhaled slowly. "That family again." At the mention of it, Emily's jaw tightened. "Derek Hammond tried to stop me from treating a child." Sarah looked at her now, studying her carefully for the first time. "And you're still here." "I didn't have a choice," Emily replied. Marcus interjected. "We do now." A silence followed that statement, not uncertain, but consequential. Sarah pulled a compact recorder from her pocket but did not activate it yet. Instead, she looked at Marcus. "If I publish this without verification, they bury it and bury me with it. I need full chain evidence." "You'll get it," Marcus said. Before Sarah could respond, Rex suddenly stood. The shift was immediate. Not aggression, but recognition. His gaze locked toward the corridor outside the room. Marcus noticed instantly. "We're compromised." The hallway lights outside flickered once, then stabilized. Too clean. Sarah stepped back slightly. "What is that?" Marcus moved toward the door. "Controlled access sweep." Emily's voice tightened. "They're already inside the building?" Marcus did not answer verbally. He simply opened a secure overlay on his device. Multiple access points across the hospital began showing incremental lockouts. Then the door handle outside moved. Slow. Intentional. Marcus positioned himself between the door and Emily. Rex moved parallel, silent, and aligned with Marcus's stance. The door opened. Security Chief Roland Graves stepped inside. But this time, he was not alone. Behind him stood additional hospital security personnel and 2 external compliance officers dressed in unmarked dark suits with federal-style identification badges that were partially obscured. Their presence changed the temperature of the room instantly, not physically, but structurally. Graves spoke first. "This facility is now under internal containment review." Emily stepped forward. "You can't contain what you're hiding." One of the external officers, a tall woman with tightly pulled-back auburn hair and a face hardened by procedural enforcement rather than field experience, stepped forward. Her badge identified her as Agent Laura Whitman, Department of Health Compliance Division. Her tone was precise, stripped of emotion. "Dr. Carter, you are currently under investigation for unauthorized data extraction and interference with protected administrative systems." Sarah looked at her immediately. "Protected from what? Accountability?" Whitman ignored her. "All devices are to be surrendered." Marcus didn't move. "This isn't administrative enforcement. This is suppression." Graves looked directly at Marcus. "You are a contracted observer. Your authorization is being revoked." Marcus tilted his head slightly. "Based on what authority?" "Federal compliance escalation," Whitman replied. Rex growled once. Low. Restrained. Controlled. The sound alone shifted attention in the room. Whitman glanced at the dog briefly. "Remove the animal." Marcus spoke calmly. "He's not the variable you want to focus on." Graves stepped forward slightly. "You are outnumbered." Marcus nodded once. "That doesn't mean you're in control." A tense silence followed. Sarah slowly raised her recorder. "Before you shut anything down, you might want to consider what's already been backed up outside this facility." Whitman's gaze shifted sharply. "What did you say?" Sarah pressed a button. A remote server indicator flashed on Marcus's interface. Data replication had already begun. Emily realized it at the same time. "You already uploaded it." Sarah nodded slightly. "You don't walk into something like this without insurance." Graves stepped forward abruptly. "Stop the transfer." Marcus didn't move. "It's already outside your perimeter." Whitman's expression changed for the first time. Subtle, but real. Not anger. Calculation failure. Sarah looked at them directly now. "You don't get to contain truth when it's already distributed." Rex took one step forward. Not toward aggression, toward resolution. Marcus spoke one final time, voice steady. "This hospital doesn't belong to you anymore. It belongs to evidence." For a moment, no one moved. Then Graves gave a small gesture to his team, but before anything escalated further, Whitman raised her hand slightly. "Hold," she said quietly. Her eyes remained fixed on the data feed. Then, more softly, "This is beyond departmental jurisdiction now." That statement changed everything. Because it meant one thing had just become unavoidable. Federal escalation was no longer a threat. It was already in motion. And Mercy General was no longer a hospital. It was now a case. Sometimes truth doesn't arrive as lightning. It arrives as a quiet correction in a broken system. In Mercy General, what began as silence turned into revelation, and what was meant to be hidden became impossible to contain. This story is a reminder that even in places built on power, corruption, and fear, there is always a line that cannot stay buried forever. When ordinary people refuse to stay silent, when courage meets conviction, truth becomes something stronger than control. And maybe that is where the real miracle lies, not in impossible events, but in the quiet strength of those who choose to do what is right when no one else will. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs hope today. Leave a comment about what you think justice means in our world, And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that remind us that truth still matters. May God bless you, protect you, and guide you and your family in every step of your daily life.